Welcome to the YSDS Life Science Podcast. Today we're digging into more of the technical aspects, more specifically regarding cold chain and all the temperature control systems out there. We have passive containers, active containers, and small shipping boxes. And with me today, we have a great guest. It's Niklas Adamsson, who is the CEO, newly become CEO from Envirotainer. Warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, it's been with the company not for almost 9 years, but taking on the interim CEO role for last month now. So it's happy to be here.
Great. Congrats to the new role.
Thanks.
Should we start just for yourself to what experiences do you have within the industry, previous roles, and how did you end up at Envirotainer and this role?
Well, how I ended up at Envirotainer, that's a kind of a funny story. I was actually when I joined Envirotainer now almost 9 years ago, I had zero exposure to logistics. Zero. Yes, huh? I'm an engineer at heart. I have a PhD in mechanical engineering, worked in the software industry for 10 years, but then sliding doors moment, and all of a sudden I ended up as head of global logistics at Envirotainer without a single day of experience of logistics. But apparently it went quite well now, sitting as the CEO for the group.
You must have done something good.
Yeah, it seems like that.
Good. Now I have a special relation to Envirotainer. Back in the days when I used to play golf in Sigtuna, we saw actually the production outside of Lagga.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it all started with a few containers.
Yeah.
And today you're a much larger company with a lot of containers shipped around the world daily.
Yeah, so I think on a daily basis, we usually kind of, when we do the number crunching, we say that we ship 2.5 million doses of pharma and vaccine every single day on a global basis. So yes, we are a key player in the industry for sure.
Oh, wow. So every year, the industry loses an estimated $35 billion due to shipment failures. I mean, that's a huge number.
It's a massive number.
We must be able to do better than this, as you know, the peers and the stakeholders in the cold chain logistics. You, as one of the leaders within the segment of providing these temperature control systems, what do you see? Do you see any red threads in where we are failing, and what we can do to mitigate this going forward?
At the end of the day, it's about people, process, and technology. Those are the three elements that we as an industry need to focus on. First of all, for each shipment, you need to be able to decide and qualify the proper equipment for that specific shipment. Is it a long duration, short duration, what temperature, what's the volume, making sure that you do a proper qualification of the equipment being used. Then, of course, you need to make sure that you have the processes in place, robust SOPs to make sure that depending on which lane you're shipping in, etc., you need to make sure that you have very clear steps of handling that specific shipment. Because I usually kind of take a simple example that you start a intercontinental shipment in Canada in wintertime, very cold. Maybe transiting Dubai, very warm, ending up in Australia. So it's kind of you have a potential exposure for that shipment in so many different environments, if you talk about intercontinental shipments. But if you talk in kind of last mile shipment, there's another context that you need to manage. So it's about the equipment, the processes, but of course the people. Because I think one of the main failures that we see is that where we have handling issues, people not being trained, not following the SOPs, etc. So it's a multi-dimensional question, I think, and it's a matter of, as an industry, making sure that you make the right decisions to avoid ending up as being one of these $30 billion losses.
Okay. are we technically moving more swiftly and fast rather than creating then the processes and training the people that's going to handle this, or is it?
I think you need to work on both sides as well. Of course, I think what we always do when we develop new solutions is, of course, taking first of all the patient, kind of focus on the patient, because at the end of the day, our customer is the patient. We need to deliver pharmaceutical and vaccines in making sure that the patient at the end of the day is actually receiving the dose. So of course it's always about protecting the pharmaceutical, but also making sure that whoever is involved in the supply chain has a kind of an ease of use to making sure that you avoid any potential failures, because we know that human factors is a key element. And for example, if you look at our active containers for multi-pallet shipments, one key risk, of course, is that while it's battery powered, so you need to make sure that you charge them whenever you need to. But our latest platform, the Rely platform, has 170 hours of battery autonomy. So there's very few shipments that are longer than 170 hours, which means that then we take away the potential human error of forgetting on charging that container. So it's about designing the equipment to minimize the risks in terms of human interaction. And I think that's kind of, it's a human-centered design approach, but also, of course, taking the patient kind of, that's the key customer, but then you have several stakeholders on the way that will interact with the equipment in the process. Do you need to replenish dry ice if you have a dry ice solution? Those kind of things, we need to kind of design the equipment as good as possible. But we will never be kind of fail-safe in terms of equipment. So you also need to have the processes, and you also need to train the people, and also have the digital and analytical solutions in place in order to catch any potential issues before they actually arise. So there's a multi-dimensional question. Can we reach a perfect situation with only technology? No. Can we only do it with people? Most likely not. So it's kind of, you need to have a split vision.
Because one thing that we see is that you have, as you say, you have the people, you have the patients in the end, and in between then you have fantastic technology, you have the processes and everything. One thing that we've seen is that it's crucial to understand who is responsible to do what when things doesn't go as planned. As a live tracker, for example, who's going to call the terminal and say, hey, now the container or this parcel is placed in the wrong temperature during customs delay, for example. So that's, no, I totally agree. That's it's a good way of seeing it.
Yeah, because with technology, you can potentially see, well, it's located in the wrong place, so ambient is too high, we are exposed to risk. But if you don't know who to call in order to interact, well, then the technology doesn't help. It actually makes the situation worse, because then you will be stressed and you can't act. So it's really, I fully agree. It's about having clear SOPs with clear responsibilities, the proper equipment to make sure that you have a successful shipment. So it's more. I usually say it's more than a container. It's the process, it's the people. And now it's also with our recent acquisition of Accutech. It's not only the container. It's a parcel. It's the people. It's kind of and that's why I always argue that no stakeholder in the supply chain can act on its own. We need to take a holistic view on the cold chain supply chains, because everyone plays a vital part. If it's an intercontinental shipment, well, then you have equipment provider, you have the pharma coast, you have the freight forwarders, you have the airlines. Everyone needs to know what to do when. And if you have a more regional kind of last mile, it's the same thing. Who's doing what? And it's kind of everyone needs to have a holistic and systemic view on the global regional cold chain supply chains.
How do you work with subcontractors or vendors? How do you choose the people you work with or companies you work with to have the optimal outcome in the end? Maybe thinking of, I don't know, reverse logistics or there are other aspects.
So I think if you look from a more kind of operational supplier point of view, to your point, we have suppliers for reverse logistics. But the on that part, the best reverse logistics is actually making sure that our equipment are used both ways. That's the best solution for reverse logistics, because also for both, mainly from of course from a business point of view, but also from a sustainability point of view, because moving units due to reverse logistics requirements, that's not really good from a sustainability point of view. So our ambition is, of course, to minimize the need for reverse logistics. We know that the global market of production, or kind of the manufacturing footprint for pharmaceutical, it's not in balance in terms of trade balance. So of course we have a share of reverse logistics, and I think that's in that sense it's a matter of finding the right partners, the suppliers. We work a lot with our airline partners because we have very, very close agreements and good agreements with them to support us, because it's in their benefits as well. But of course sometimes. And also in order to minimize the sustainability footprint, we also use sea freight to some extent as well, because it's a matter of kind of finding the balance of being as sustainable as possible, but also being able to serve the market. So it's a matter of finding the highest performing, but of course also, again, cost is also a matter for us, because it needs to be as cost efficient, but also as reliable, because we can't miss a shipment, because if we miss a shipment, there's a potentially patient that will suffer from that. So we need to make sure that the equipment is available every single day, everywhere in the world. And I think we had a recent example, which I was briefed a few days ago in APAC, where we had a patient in South Korea that was in urgent need of one specific shipment from Singapore. And the team... And that's our DNA. It was outside of business hours. It doesn't matter, because we actually, who's the most important person for us? It's the patient. So the team outside business hours was make sure that the pharmaceutical company, they received their parcel in order to do an overnight delivery in order to save a patient's life in South Korea. So we can't miss a shipment. That's kind of it's part of our DNA. That's our purpose. So it's really about finding the right suppliers to making sure that we have the service levels which are required by the industry. So it's really a matter of, we're in a trust industry. It's a trust business. We can't miss a shipment, and we can't fail on a shipment. Those two, from an operational point of view, are the most important indicators that we are tracking: availability and reliability. Because at the end of the day, there's a patient in need.
Speaking about this patients here that we saved in the end because of these solutions, that's fantastic. Do you have any other examples of when you saw that the shipment were about to fail, but maybe with them, when you going back to the collaboration here with maybe terminal or freight forwarders or courier companies, did you save a shipment just because you're so you can act on these potential ongoing deviations with the live check results, etc.?
Of course, that happens on a regular basis, I would say, because with our latest, if you look at active containers with the Rely platform, where we have the live monitoring, we have sensors for every single data point you need, and actually we have more sensors than we publish to the customer. We track every single detail in that container. And we also, on top of that, we have a 24/7 control tower, which means that no matter there's a deviation from door opening, cargo inside, door opening more than 10 minutes, cargo inside, ambient temperature 25 C, then the alarm is triggered. We reach out through our customer service, help or technical support, to the customer, making sure that they will interfere. And there are several occasions where due to human factor, we were able to kind of mitigate that kind of issue on tarmac or in the warehouse. Because coming back to, charging or door opening, customs hold, there's a number of examples which can create these situations. And it may be also that there are persons who are not familiar with these solutions, who's interacting, or customs, who's not familiar, they are not trained And of course, there will be potential human error in that case. And then, of course, with the technology, we can interact together with our freight forwarders and the rest of the supply chain. So I think the monitoring piece is extremely important. And I think this is a trend if you zoom out as well on kind of where the industry is going in terms of utilizing data, analytics, AI, it's critical for the industry. And I think we only kind of scratch the surface where we're heading. And I think what we have been doing for many, many years for internal purposes, and that's something the customer doesn't see, because we avoid failures by leveraging data analytics. So every time a container is coming back from a commercial trip, we evaluate and analyze the runtime data. And given the fact our position in industry and all the runtime data we have from the last 15 years, there's quite some data. So we can tell, you may know about the predictive maintenance, predictive analytics and preventive maintenance. We can predict and prevent a potential failure, technical failure for the customer, because we know it before it happens. So it's about, does it save a shipment during shipment? No, but it save a shipment pre-shipment. So it's a matter of kind of utilizing data pre-shipment, post-shipment, but pre-shipment, during shipment, but also post-shipment. Because sometimes you don't catch these deviations when they happen, but you catch them once you analyze the temperature data afterwards, and then it's a matter, do you have the data to find the root cause? Because that's kind of, you have deviations, okay. Let's do the root cause analysis. What's the corrective preventive action? And by utilizing data, we can see, well, at this certain point during loading, the doors were open more than 15 minutes, which is outside the standard operating procedure. So kind of that's the root cause for that deviation. And we can tell that because we have that data, even though it's not live, because for our e-tech series, it's not yet live, but soon to come. But we still have the data. So post-shipment, we can also provide data for insights in order to make the next shipment even better. But if I may continue on the data piece, I think, as I said, we only scratch the surface.
Yeah.
Everyone is talking about it. How far have we come? I think we're just beginning of the journey. But I think it's also about utilizing technology where it makes most sense. But also, and I think this is something I discussed on Logipharma on a panel seminar earlier this year, is that technology, coming back to what we discussed in the beginning, technology, people, and processes. If you don't have the right people utilizing technology, you won't get there. So it's a matter also as an industry, what's a competence profile of the future workforce? Because a fool with a tool is still a fool. So we need to make sure that we hire and train the people to make sure that we leverage the capabilities. Because they're saying, okay, now we're going to do AI and analytics. If you have an organization, a supply chain who's not really willing to kind of adopt and don't know how to assess and kind of maximize the value, we won't get there. So I think we're in kind of a trend shift as well as an industry, not only from what we do, but also how we do. So I think we have a few years ahead of us. It's going to be very exciting.
Just came to think about a crazy idea. We mentioned the collaboration earlier, and now you talk about sustainability, and there's a cost, and then versus the risk. So every company, almost every company, they have a budget, and they're not really aware about these risks and how much they should budget for the logistics and moving these sensitive products. But the crazy idea would be then, we see every now and then that it's one pallet, maybe in a 2 or 3 pallet two pallets in a 3 pallet shipper. So the space here, sustainability and the cost would be then to maybe collaborate with a peer, moving the same type of temperature sensitive product to that destination or country. Maybe that's a good collaboration move to keep track of sustainability and costs.
And of course, from a consolidation point of view, because also when we talk about smaller batches, It doesn't need to be a one pallet.
No.
So can you consolidate pharmaceutical shipments into larger shippers? That will be for sure a great move in terms of sustainability. Because if you look at every single shipment as a small shipment, looking at the insulation material that's needed, what kind of cooling medium you're using, that will build up in terms of volume. And all of a sudden you can't ship as much pharmaceuticals as you could if you do it from a consolidation point of view.
What's the upsides with the active containers versus the passive containers? What are the things we're looking into here? Why should we sometimes choose a passive solution, or why should we do an active solution?
I think this is a multifaceted question. I think it comes back to what we said in the beginning. Each shipment should use the right equipment, depending on size and temperature range, etc. But if you take 2 to 8 as a temperature range, then active is as long as you do multi-pallet pallet shipments, it's the best option, both from a total landed cost, because I think that's kind of coming back to budget and cost. When you sometimes from a customer point of view, you don't kind of look on the total landed cost. You look at the equipment cost, you look at the handling cost. Kind of, is it the dryest? Kind of you separate the cost items, but you don't look at the total landed cost. So from a total landed cost, if you have pallet shipments or multi-pallet shipment, active is the most cost efficient. But also from a sustainability point of view, because if you look how many pallets can you look at from a aircraft point of view, on 4 positions, how many per position, how many pallets of pharmaceutical can you actually put there? And that's kind of it's obvious that you, from an active point of view, you can do more volume of pharmaceutical per volumetric cargo load, so to speak, which means that per dose, your footprint will be very low. So it's about really maximizing the volume of cargo you're shipping. So but not only from a total landed cost, but from a sustainability point of view, but also from a performance point of view. 170 hours, and if you need, you can pull it in. You can plug it in and charge it even longer. So if you have those requirements, active is the only solution. It's clear. But of course, if you have more stability data, there's a different temperature range, then of course an advanced passive could potentially do a better job. Because if you have a negative temperature range, for example, then an advanced passive would be the most preferred option. It's a matter of being as efficient as possible, and then you need to be able to select the right equipment for that specific shipment. And then, of course, having the right freight forwarder partners, the right airline partners. So then you come into the kind of more holistic perspective on supply chain. You need to make sure you have partners that can handle an advanced passive or a passive solution or an active solution. So it's again, the systemic partnership, having the right equipment for the right shipment, balancing risk, cost, and sustainability. So this is not an easy task.
It's a lot of factors.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of this industry as well. It's not a simple business, but at the end of the day, we have an extremely important mission, and because at the end of the day, there's a patient waiting for that specific dose. So it's kind of you kind of zoom out. It's very simple. Deliver that dose to that patient. Okay, and then you kind of zoom in and then see all the complexities. But I think that's the beauty of this industry.
Now, there's no room for failure in our industry. Just as personalized the medicines, we see also that the industry of logistics is moving into more personalized or more specific for that specific shipment to that destination, with that temperature, with that size and commodity type, etc. So, yeah, we need to be very agile and think about all the things that you mentioned there. So,
yeah, and I think given also the dynamics of our industry in terms of shipping patterns, etc., and we also operate in a rather dynamic world, as we all know, when it comes to geopolitical situations, where we have floodings, we have hurricanes. Well, there's so many things, external factors as we as the industry supply chain, we can't influence those. But that also puts even more requirements on agility. And because if you have a conflict zone, there's still a patient there. They don't care. They don't care. So, for example, take Israel and Tel Aviv. We've been 100% operational throughout the conflict now, because at the end of the day, there are patients there. And it was the same thing during the pandemic. I think our estimate is that we shipped 1.3 billion doses of vaccines. And we remain 100% operational in all depots on a global basis throughout the pandemic. Yes, we took a lot of safety measures, making sure that our staff was safe. But at the end of the day, we have a mission, we have a purpose. Because at the end of the day, there's a patient waiting for that specific dose. And that we always need to tell. Every time we go to the office, we need to understand, why are we here? Because there's a patient out there. And what I usually say, this is more than a job. Because it becomes part of you. Because everyone has someone in family member, a friend, a colleague, or anyone you know that is in daily need of pharmaceuticals. And that's why we do this. And I think that's kind of, if you would ask anyone in our organization, what's our purpose? And we are so proud of it, but also connects to what we do on a daily basis. And this is so important, because we can't fail. We need to be there every single time, and we need to make sure that we deliver high-performing equipment. That's what we do.
Well said. I mean, with your experiences and working at Envirotainer, you've seen a lot of things throughout the years. If you could give just one recommendation to the peers in the industry, should that be clients, freight forwarders, courier companies, or even receivers? I know it's a hard question, but one recommendation, one thing that people should take with them from this podcast today, what should that be?
And this is something I've been coming back to, that specific kind of statement for many, many years. In order for us to be a resilient supply chain, because I think this comes down to resilience, we need to act in true partnership throughout the supply chain. That's the key to success. That's the key to success, to making sure that patient is actually receiving that dose of pharmaceutical. Because if we isolate us from each other, we will have failures. And then you could become one of these $30 billion US dollar loss. And you don't want to do that. For me, this is a true partnership industry, which needs to be built on trust, but also strong partnership and clear responsibilities. So partnership, agreements, and trust is what I always tell our customers and our partners. That's what needs to drive this industry.
We at YSDS, we're happy to have a good partnership together with Envirotainer.
Happy to hear that.
So thank you, Niklas, for joining the podcast today. Very insightful recommendations and knowledge.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. You have been listening to YSDS Life Science Podcasts, a 3-part series where we have highlighted and explored the challenges within cold chain logistics. If you found one of these topics interesting or need support with your upcoming shipments, please do not hesitate reaching out to us at YSDS or follow us on LinkedIn.